Hello, nerds. Mrs. Smith here to talk to you all about World Space Week and the awesome space-themed books that you can check out from the library. World Space Week is an international celebration all about space and technology and science and the betterment of mankind. For more information on World Space Week, go to worldspaceweek.org. This year's World Space Week theme is Women in Space, so I have two wonderful books that I can't wait to talk to you about, as well as a lot of other books. Let's get started. The first book I have for you is Astronauts, Women on the Final Frontier by Jim Ottavani and Maris Wicks. This is a biographical graphic novel all about the first women in space. It follows the women in NASA, as well as the first woman to ever go into space, Valentina Tereshkova. All about her life and her experiences and all about how these women pioneered the space program at NASA. It's got a very funny, cartoony style. The narrator is very sassy, which I love. It is all about this really important part of our history and is on theme with World Space Week, Women in Space. The next book I want to show you is called Almost Astronauts, 13 Women Who Dared to Dream by Tanya Lee Stone. This is about the Mercury 13. You probably have not heard of the Mercury 13, but this is a group of 13 women who wanted to prove that they had the right stuff to go into space and to be astronauts. All of the women in the Mercury 13 were pilots. Some of them had logged even more flight time than the men who were part of the Mercury 7. This book is all about the obstacles they faced and the opposition that they faced from all fronts, including Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson, as well as NASA and the media and even other women. It's a very inspiring story and ends on a very hopeful note because it talks about the contribution that they made to NASA and how they paved the way for others. There's lots of pictures, lots of stories. It's a really conversational type of nonfiction, so it's really engaging and fun to read. I highly recommend it. And again, on theme for Women in Space for World Space Week. Next, I'd like to share some nonfiction titles related to space and space travel. First, we have Disaster Strikes, the Most Dangerous Space Missions of All Time by Jeffrey Kluger. This book details 12 of the different disasters that NASA has faced when they're trying to get to space. Surprise, going to space is actually incredibly risky and dangerous. This covers some of the more well-known disasters like the Challenger explosion, but also some of the lesser-known disasters. For instance, did you know that Apollo 12 was struck by a bolt of lightning as it was taking off? Because I didn't. This is really fascinating and really hooks your attention. So if you are looking for something that's nonfiction related to space and World Space Week, I would recommend this. In the same vein as Disaster Strikes, we also have Epic Fails, The Race to Space, Countdown to Liftoff. This is all about the stumbles that NASA faced along the way. Again, traveling to space is not easy, and it took them a lot of epic fails before they eventually got it right. This is a really funny look at some of these mistakes that NASA has made. There's like little illustrations to keep you engaged and interested. So if you want a more funny side to NASA's mistakes, I would highly recommend this one. You probably know a little bit about the space race, Russia versus the United States, who can get to space first. Well, this book, In the Shadow of the Moon by Amy Cherrix, is all about the two scientists on the opposite side of the space race. One is a former Nazi turned US Cold War scientist, and the other is a Russian rocket scientist. This book follows their lesser known rivalry. It's really compelling, really well researched. It's a form of narrative nonfiction. So even though it's nonfiction, it's not dry or boring. It reads kind of like you're reading a story. So if you're interested in that part of US history and the space race, check out In the Shadow of the Moon. You may know the names of different famous people that have been to space, but do you know the names of any famous animals that have been to space? Well, now you can with 50 animals that have been to space. This book is pretty self-explanatory. It's all about different animals that have been to space. Each page is a different animal, what country they were from. There's lots of pictures of animals, cute animals in like little space suits. This is a cat. Her name was Felicette, and she was part of the French space program. This is really interesting and fascinating. We often think of people like Neil Armstrong who have been to the moon and the contributions that humans have made, but this book covers the animal side of things, and we can't forget that our animal friends also made it possible for humanity to travel to space. Maybe nonfiction isn't your genre, and that's okay. Maybe you want something a little more realistic, a little more down to earth. See what I did there? Down to earth, because anyway. Well, I got you covered there too. This book is called How to Become a Planet by Nicole Melleby. This book follows a 12-year-old girl named Pluto. Pluto has been suffering from anxiety and depression, so much so that she actually missed the last month of 7th grade. Now that it's summer, Pluto isn't really interested in doing the stuff that she used to be interested in doing, like going to the beach or hanging out with her old friends. Pluto just wants to hang out at the planetarium and avoid her mom. But her mom is threatening to send her to move to New York City with her dad. So Pluto comes up with a list of things to do over the summer that might make her feel more like herself, and if she can complete the list, maybe she can prove to her mom that she's well enough to not go live in New York with her dad. This is a very compelling, emotional book. It is a realistic fiction book, but it's still space-themed. The main character's name is Pluto, which I know is not a planet, but anyway, if you're looking for something a little more down to earth, check out How to Become a Planet. Space Case by Stuart Gibbs is about 12-year-old Dash Gibson. Dash lives on the moon, which sounds super exciting, right? No, it's actually pretty boring, like typical Earth stuff. However, things change when the beloved doctor on the moon base is possibly murdered? Dies under mysterious circumstances? So Dash is suspicious. He recruits 2 tech-savvy friends to help him investigate, but while they're investigating, they can never forget that they might be trapped on the moon with a killer. If that's not quirky enough for you, then we have Ambassador by William Alexander. This follows 11-year-old Gabe Fuentes. Gabe is just chilling in his room one day when what appears to be a sentient sock puppet appears and tells him that he has been chosen for Earth's ambassador to this intergalactic summit. Turns out the sock puppet is actually an alien. So while Gabe is in space trying to solve some problems to make sure that the Earth is safe, his family actually has some issues because they're undocumented. And it's all about Gabe trying to figure out, okay, can I solve this trouble with my family and Earth? And he's thrust into this intergalactic adventure. So if you want something a little more quirky with alien sock puppets, check out Ambassador. Maybe none of the books that I've talked about so far have interested you. Maybe you just want a complicated love story set in space. Well, for you, I have A Complicated Love Story Set in Space by Sean David Hutchinson. This book follows Noah, who wakes up on a spaceship with 2 other teenagers who don't have any memory of how they got there. Oh, and the ship is about to explode. So the 3 teenagers are put in this dangerous situation, hijinks ensue, and there's, of course, a love story. Even though this book deals with some heavier topics like identity and assault, it's told in this really fun, action-packed, fast-paced way. So if you want a complicated love story set in space, I think I have the book for you. Even though World Space Week celebrates the real contributions of people in space, I couldn't leave out some sci-fi on this list. I personally love science fiction. It's one of my favorite genres, so if you like sci-fi too, these next few books are for you. First, we have Do You Dream of Terra 2 by Temi O. This is an adult book, but it's perfect for YA readers. This book takes place in an alternate timeline where scientists discover another Earth in space, and it doesn't have any inhabitants. So a British space agency decides to send a team of 6 teenagers and 3 veteran astronauts to colonize this planet. However, when they embark on their journey, they find that it is way more dangerous than anything they were ever prepared for. This next book is similar to Do You Dream of Terra 2, and that is Across the Universe by Beth Revis. This book is about Amy, a 17-year-old who is cryogenically frozen with her parents aboard the spaceship Godspeed. Their job is to be cryogenically frozen for the journey, and then once they land on a planet, they are awoken and they can colonize the planet. However, Amy is awoken 50 years too early and very violently woken up from her cryogenic sleep. So it's possible that someone aboard the ship tried to have her killed and is trying to sabotage the mission. When Amy wakes up, she finds the society on the spaceship is completely different from anything she's used to. So she works with Elder, who is the son of the leader aboard the ship, to find who is trying to sabotage this mission to another planet. This next book blends science fiction and fantasy and is based on the story of Anastasia, and that is Heart of Iron by Ashley Poston. This follows Anastasia, an orphan who is found drifting through space alone with an android. She's picked up by some space pirates. They take her in, and as time wears on, her beloved android starts to fall into disrepair. But Anna's android is actually not legal. They're one of the last androids that hasn't had the government uploaded into their system. So in order to fix her android friend, she has to be really sneaky and go on adventures. And of course, there's also this whole issue of who's going to rule the kingdom and who's in charge. Because it's based on Anastasia, possibly it's Anna who is the heir to the throne. This is a fast-paced, action-packed adventure. The chapters are short, so it's really readable. There's lots of plot twists and turns. So if you're looking for a twisty, fantasy-like adventure in space, I recommend Heart of Iron by Ashley Poston. This next book is an action-packed sci-fi adventure with lots of witty banter and a sassy main character, and that is Crown Chasers by Rebecca Offendorfer. This book follows Alyssa Farshot, who left her royal life to go on adventures in space. However, her uncle, the emperor, before he dies, he sets this treasure hunt to find this royal artifact, and whoever finds this artifact in the empire becomes the next ruler. So that sets Alyssa on her most dangerous mission yet. So if you like that sort of thing, I recommend Crown Chasers. All right, nerds, that's going to do it for me. If you have any questions or if you'd like to check out any of these books, feel free to stop by the library. Happy World Space Week!